The Life of Geronimo, a story of loss and resilience in the 1850s. Geronimo and his band of Chiricahua Apache traveled into Mexico to trade, taking advantage of a temporary peace treaty. They set up camp near a Mexican town, staying for several days, leaving a small group of warriors to guard the camp. Most of the men ventured into town to conduct trade. On their return, they were met by distraught women and children who reported that Mexican troops had attacked the camp. Rushing back, Geronimo and the others discovered a scene of devastation. The guards had been killed, their horses and supplies stolen, and many women and children massacred. Among the dead were Geronimo's wife, mother, and 3 young children. This tragedy left an indelible mark on him, fostering a lifelong animosity toward Mexicans. The Mexican commander, Colonel Carrasco, later claimed the attack was in retaliation for previous Apache raids. Whether or not this was the case, the brutal loss profoundly shaped Geronimo's life and motivations. Overcome with grief, Geronimo followed Apache mourning traditions, burning his family's belongings. Seeking solace, he retreated into the wilderness, where he claimed to have experienced a vision. According to Geronimo, a voice spoke to him, saying, "No gun will ever kill you. I will take the bullets from the guns and guide your arrows." Fueled by this vision and his immense sorrow, Geronimo rallied a war party to strike back. The Apaches launched a campaign deep into Mexico, where they were met by 8 companies of Mexican infantry. During the ensuing battles, Geronimo recognized soldiers from the unit responsible for the massacre of his family, further igniting his fury. Although grieving deeply, he was chosen to lead the Apache warriors into battle. Displaying immense bravery, Geronimo led a charge against the Mexican forces. In one notable confrontation, he faced an entire company of riflemen. Ignoring the bullets whizzing past him, he charged into enemy ranks armed only with a hunting knife, slashing through Mexican troops in a display of extraordinary determination and rage. His resilience and courage solidified his role as a prominent leader among the Apache. The legend of Geronimo, a life forged in resilience, the cries of fear and prayers of Mexican soldiers, who called upon Saint Jerome, San Geronimo, for protection during Geronimo's attacks, inspired the name by which he became known. Geronimo later embraced these death cries as his own, and the legend of Geronimo was born. Early life of Geronimo. Geronimo was born on June 16, 1829, near what is now Clifton, Arizona, in the Nodoyan Canyon. His birth name was Goyakla, meaning one who yawns. He belonged to the Badanco subsection, a smaller group within the larger Chiricahua band of Apaches. The Badanco were known for their strength and resilience. Geronimo grew up with 3 brothers and 4 sisters in a close-knit family. As a boy, he learned to farm crops such as corn, beans, squash, and peppers in the fertile, well-watered lands of his homeland. However, Geronimo's talents extended beyond agriculture. Early on, his community recognized his ability to foresee events and interpret the present, qualities considered sacred among the Apache. He was trained as a shaman, learning holy songs, prayers, and rituals that would shape his spiritual role in the tribe. Becoming a warrior and leader by the time Geronimo came of age, he had already displayed remarkable skills as a hunter. At just 17, in 1846, he was admitted to the Council of Warriors, marking his transition into adulthood and granting him the right to marry. That same year, he began to demonstrate his leadership and bravery by leading 4 successful raids against neighboring tribes. Around this time, Geronimo fell in love with a woman named Elope, who became his wife. The couple had 3 children together, forming a family that brought him immense joy, though their lives would later be marred by tragedy. A life of conflict, the Apaches faced constant conflict during this period. To the south, they clashed with Mexican forces. To the north, they confronted the advancing United States military. Additionally, they engaged in skirmishes with neighboring Comanche and Navajo tribes. These unrelenting battles honed Geronimo's skills as both a warrior and leader, setting the stage for the remarkable legacy he would leave behind. Geronimo, War, Loss, and Leadership in the 1850s. Geronimo and his band of Apaches traveled into Old Mexico to trade under the protection of a peace treaty. Near Casqui, in Chihuahua, disaster struck. While most of the men were in town trading, Mexican forces attacked the Apache camp. They killed most of those present, including Geronimo's entire family, his wife, mother, and 3 children. Devastated, Geronimo mourned according to Apache tradition. During this period of grief, he claimed to have heard a voice, saying, "No gun will ever kill you. I will take the bullets from the guns and guide your arrows." Motivated by this vision, Geronimo donned war paint and rallied warriors from his and allied bands, including the Badonko Apaches led by Chief Mongas Coloradas, the Chokanin Apaches under Chief Cochise, and the Nedni Apaches led by Chief Hu. Together, they set off on the warpath, covering up to 45 miles a day, pausing only to hunt and rest. Early battles and leadership their journey took them to the settlement of Arizpe, where Mexican forces dispatched 8 companies of infantry to confront them. Despite being outnumbered, the Apaches, under the leadership of Mongas Coloradas and inspired by Geronimo's courage, emerged victorious. Witnesses later recounted how Geronimo charged in a battle armed only with a knife, ignoring the bullets around him. His bravery earned him widespread respect, and many warriors began to see him as a natural war leader. In the following months, Geronimo led successful raids on the Mexican frontier, attacking settlements and supply lines. On one occasion, after returning from a raid, his band encountered Mexican soldiers attacking an Apache settlement. The ensuing battle lasted a full day, resulting in heavy losses on both sides. 8 Mexicans and 5 Apaches were killed before the soldiers retreated. Encounters with settlers around this time, the Apaches encountered white settlers for the first time. Although they couldn't speak the same language, the 2 groups communicated using gestures and befriended one another. The settlers, who were measuring land, traded with the Apaches and offered them money. Initially unfamiliar with its value, the Apaches later learned of its worth through the Navajos. Geronimo spoke positively of these settlers, recalling that his people were sad to see them leave as they moved westward. Guerrilla tactics and conflict. Geronimo continued to dedicate his life to defending his people and raiding enemy territories. He led small, fast-moving war parties of 5 to 30 warriors that struck Mexican settlements, supply trains, and military outposts. They would seize weapons, horses, cattle, and provisions before retreating to Apache territory. Skilled in guerrilla warfare, Geronimo taught his warriors tactics of invisibility, using rugged canyons and mountains to evade pursuit. They would strike quickly and disappear, frustrating their enemies. The Bascom Affair, an escalating conflict in 1861, tensions with the U.S. escalated in what became known as the Bascom Affair. Lieutenant George Bascom was dispatched to recover livestock and a kidnapped boy, allegedly taken by Apaches. Bascom confronted Chief Cochise, who denied involvement and was taken hostage during negotiations. Cochise managed to escape, but both sides retaliated by taking and later killing hostages. This incident ignited 25 years of bloody hostilities between the Chiricahua Apaches and the United States, as well as a personal decade-long war between Cochise and the U.S. Army. After the Bascom Affair, relations between the Apaches and white settlers deteriorated. Skirmishes broke out sporadically, with neither side achieving a decisive victory. The death of Mongas Coloradas in 1863. Chief Mongas Coloradas sought peace with American settlers and approached Fort Apache under a flag of truce. He was promised food, blankets, and supplies in exchange for peace. Sensing danger, Mongas sent his companions back to camp and entered alone. Tragically, he was captured, tortured, and killed. This betrayal infuriated the Apaches, and they launched retaliatory attacks against the U.S. Army. Leadership and resilience. Following the death of Mongas Coloradas, Geronimo emerged as a prominent leader. In a time of relentless U.S. military campaigns and scarce resources, he led his people to join Chief Victorio's Cheyenne Apaches in Hot Springs, New Mexico. Geronimo later described this time as one of the most peaceful and pleasant periods of his life, as the 2 bands grew close and supported each other. In 1864, The Apaches returned to their homeland and continued their resistance. To protect their families, the tribe developed strategies to avoid being tracked. They scattered across the region, reassembling at designated camps located 40 to 50 miles from their previous sites. This allowed them to evade Mexican and U.S. forces while ensuring their family's safety. Meanwhile, Geronimo led daring raids deep into enemy territory, cementing his reputation as one of the most formidable Apache leaders in history. The later years of Geronimo, war, betrayal, and resistance. Geronimo's reputation grew not only for his bravery, but also for the supernatural abilities attributed to him by his followers. Many believed he could heal the sick, slow time, avoid bullets, summon rainstorms, and even see events over great distances. Apache warrior Jason Betsinez recounted a remarkable incident during a raiding expedition. While gathered around a campfire, Geronimo suddenly had a vision that U.S. troops were attacking their base camp. Days later, when they returned to the site, they found Geronimo's vision had been accurate. The Americans had already captured the encampment. Betsinez later wrote, "I cannot explain it to this day, but I was there and I saw it." Victories and betrayals in Mexico, Indiana, 1872. Mexican troops attacked an Apache settlement, but the Apaches repelled them, emerging victorious. In the following years, Geronimo and his band joined Chief, whose Nedni Apaches in the Sierra Madre Mountains of Mexico. Together, they defeated 2 companies of Mexican cavalry, killing nearly all the soldiers. These victories strengthened the alliance between the Badonko and Nedni Apaches, and the bands often alternated between living in Arizona and Old Mexico. Not every battle ended in triumph. In one confrontation, the Apaches were forced to retreat into the mountains after sustaining casualties. After months of skirmishes, a peace treaty was agreed upon at Casas Grandes, Chihuahua. However, the treaty was a ruse. During the post-treaty celebrations, the Mexicans supplied mezcal to the Apaches. Once intoxicated, the Mexicans attacked, killing 20 Apaches and capturing many others. The surviving Apaches retreated into the mountains, vowing vengeance. Cochise's peace and Geronimo's defiance after this betrayal. Chief Cochise sought peace with the United States. He negotiated with General Oliver Howard, who promised to establish a reservation for the Chiricahua Apaches near their homeland. Cochise trusted Howard, as did the other Apache leaders, and peace was briefly achieved. Geronimo, who respected Howard for his fairness, later said, "All the natives respected him because he was always fair, and his purpose was always to maintain peace on the reservation." The Chiricahua were provided with ample food and supplies, and relations with the U.S. Army stabilized. However, this peace unraveled when Howard was reassigned. The reservation at Ojo Caliente, where Geronimo and Chief Victorio had settled, was closed, and all Apaches were ordered to move to the San Carlos Reservation in Arizona. Victorio and his band refused, escaping into the night. The U.S. Army was ordered to kill any Apache found outside the reservations. Victorio's band, numbering around 200, was relentlessly pursued across the southwest and into Mexico, fighting over 20 skirmishes. Eventually, Mexican soldiers cornered them, killing almost everyone, including Victorio, who was reportedly the last to fall. Geronimo's return to resistance. By 1883, tensions on the San Carlos Reservation reached a boiling point. Spurred by Geronimo, hundreds of Apaches abandoned the reservation, heading south into Mexico. They hid caches of food and supplies across the southwest and northern Mexico, allowing them to sustain their resistance. The U.S. and Mexican governments, determined to defeat the Apaches, formed an agreement allowing their armies to cross the border freely in pursuit of native forces. A fierce battle ensued south of Arizpe, where the Mexican army attacked the Apaches in the mountains. The fight lasted from dawn until nightfall. During the battle, Geronimo managed to reach the Mexican general who was commanding his troops and killed him. The death of their leader demoralized the Mexican forces, and they ceased their aggressive push. As night fell, the Apaches set the surrounding grass ablaze, using the fire as a diversion to escape. General Crook's campaign in response to the escalating conflict the U.S. Army sent General George Crook to subdue the Apaches. Known for his respect for the natives and his deep understanding of their culture, Crook was both feared and admired by the Apaches. He employed Apache scouts to track Geronimo and his band, creating a campaign that combined military force with psychological pressure. Despite this, Geronimo continued to evade capture, leading his warriors in hit-and-run attacks and using the rugged terrain to his advantage. The final years of Geronimo, resistance, surrender, and legacy. Geronimo once described the Apache people as the tiger of the human species, highlighting their resilience and ferocity. Despite being relentlessly pursued, Geronimo and his band continued their resistance. After a prolonged chase, General George Crook managed to locate Geronimo. Facing overwhelming odds, Geronimo agreed to meet Crook and negotiated a temporary settlement. The agreement allowed the Chiricahua Apaches to relocate to a new reservation at Turkey Creek. However, life on the reservation did not sit well with Geronimo. Upon learning of plans to arrest him, he escaped once more. Most Chiricahua Apaches remained on reservations, but Geronimo and a small group retreated to the Sierra Madre Mountains. This final band of free Chiricahua Apaches included 37 people, 18 warriors, 13 women, and 6 children, 2 of whom were infants. For 5 months, they evaded capture, while 5,000 U.S. soldiers, 3,000 Mexican soldiers, and less than 1,000 civilian volunteers searched for them. Surrender and exile. In 1886, General Nelson Miles replaced Crook and devised a new strategy. To break the Apache's spirit, Miles ordered the relocation of all 400 Chiricahua Apaches from the San Carlos Reservation to a prison in Florida. The fear of this forced relocation ultimately pressured Geronimo into surrendering. Miles promised that Geronimo's group would be reunited with their families within 5 days and that no harm would come to them. Trusting this assurance, Geronimo surrendered for the final time. The Chiricahua Apaches were initially sent to Florida, but the humid climate and malaria outbreaks led to severe suffering. After 2 years, they were relocated to Alabama, where Geronimo's group was reunited with their families. Eventually, in 1894, they were moved again to Fort Sill, Oklahoma. A public figure in final days despite his status as a prisoner of war, Geronimo became a national figure. He toured the United States, participating in fairs and exhibitions, including Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. His most notable public appearance occurred on March 4, 1905, when he joined President Theodore Roosevelt's inaugural parade in Washington, D.C., alongside 5 other Native American leaders. In his later years, Geronimo converted to Christianity but remained deeply connected to his Apache heritage. Over his lifetime, he married 9 women and fathered 7 children. In February 1909, after a night of heavy drinking, Geronimo fell from his horse into a ditch and was unable to move until morning. He developed pneumonia and passed away. A few days later, on his deathbed, Geronimo reportedly expressed regret, saying, "I should never have surrendered. I should have fought until I was the last man alive." Legacy of the Chiricahua Apaches. The Chiricahua Apaches remained prisoners of war until 1913, for years after Geronimo's death. Upon their release, 2/3 of the tribe chose to move to the Mescalero Apache Reservation in New Mexico, while the remaining third stayed at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. Geronimo's life remains a symbol of resistance, resilience, and the struggles faced by indigenous peoples during a time of relentless expansion and colonization. His legacy endures as a reminder of the enduring spirit of the Apache people.